to the first gameplay video on our YouTube channel. My name is Ducasse. I'm the founder of Continuity, and today it's my pleasure to present our fighting squad. It consists of field commanders whose victorious deeds are to stand alongside Alexander, Caesar, etc. Hope you recall the reference. We got quite a salad bowl here in terms of nationalities, age and playstyle, but I personally vouch for each and every of whom I recruited. They are pretty like my sons. I cherish them all. That is why I decided to dedicate this video to their individual perks in battle. As you may know, our team is divided into 3 categories, which are admins, core members and new members. I will cover the gameplay chronologically based on the date of their enrollment. For that I added chapters on the video timeline so you can easily locate a specific player. So let's start with myself. It's gonna be pretty short since it's always kinda weird to speak about your battle performance from an objective viewpoint. My role is an IGL, boiling down to making tactical decisions and navigating teamwork. I consider myself a steadfast defensive player with a great fondness for cavalry that gives me enough space to advance with my cav, mostly on both flanks, squashing everything on my way. My teammate once bursted out in chat. It went like, Ducasse, you can't be everywhere, all over the map, just control your side. Well, this is my understanding of a middle player's role. I expect the middle player to be highly supportive and attentive to micro-tactical occurrences throughout the battle. He's got to be very stable, adroit, and his force has to showcase great mobility on the battlefield. Otherwise, his function is not that required. I'm also notorious for playing risky with the general. Quite often it doesn't pay off for me, but it's still kinda goofy and noble to harass enemies' generals. No, I mean like to play risky with the most valuable unit in your army, obviously. My favorite maps are hot maps and ironically cold ones, such as Siberia and Pyrenees Peak as well. Faction-wise, I prefer playing Portugal, Netherlands and France, but recently I catch myself playing the UK and Prussia more often indeed. I never considered myself a grassy player until recently, as it struck me that I might perform there better than on Italian flatlands. In huge multiplayer battles, I usually give the enemy time to expose his weak spots and then run him over. Until then, I mostly spend time coordinating my allies. Once the enemy is trapped or forced to pull back, our team acts errorously like a Swiss watch, with each player taking matters into his own hands in his area of action. Observing my in-game tactics, I operate based on the assumption that to beat the enemy, faking is essential. It works the same way as in sex. Once you fake it, your counterpart will be pleased until the moment your subterfuge is out. There are many ways to achieve it. Some will entail more casualties, others more tactical risks, but essentially, the more authentic your plan is, the better. Raevsky is a co-founder of Continuity and one of our most active players. Despite our premise of uniting oldies and NTW, Raevsky is relatively new to this game. I met him in the summer 2020 as he only had less than 2 months experience, but due to his willingness and natural talent, he clawed his way to the competitive stage very fast, beating multiple famous opponents and leading the team's avant-garde. I have a great fondness for Raevsky, and with no hesitation I can speak of him as MVP of our community. He's a versatile, forward-thinking player who tends to attack if he underestimates the enemy. His favorite factions are Austria and Russia, but he equally plays others too. He usually shows better results at terrains than on flatlands, and I especially enjoy our cooperation on flank attacks and his generosity, in particular at leaving a few victims to my raptors. And my personal highlight is his magnificent performance as a middle player on Pyrenees Peak. He usually takes Russia, knocks off his enemy in no time by hitting 2000 kills, and leaves his teammates pretty much out of action. Don Juan is the third admin of our community. In fact, he was not the third member to join Continuity. Juan is my old Russian pal. I know him personally. He's the Goldie Oldie of our community, if you want. He was one of the big shots in Russian Total War Clan USSR under the name Affairist. He's not just an excellent tactician, but a gifted musician too. That trait of his possibly helps him to dance on the battlefield to whatever jingle I order. He's not the one who shuns early melee attacks and profusely uses his firing squads for that instead of reloading. Like myself, he enjoys playing both hot and cold maps. His beloved factions are those with good melee, so Ottomans and Russians. I remember him playing the UK long ago, but he barely comes back to it in his recent career. He usually splits his cavalry apart to irritate the enemy in which direction the main attack will follow, and after testing the waters, he hits in the flank opposite to his main army, opening the gate to a final offensive. He also prefers to use his lights in a short distance, that's a specialty of his. Sadly, Juan is not active right now, that's why I'm lacking replays with his gameplay, but I hope I will witness his comeback before another 10 years have passed Juan, and we will have another great time together. By the way, a fun fact about us: as we met in Moscow, we went all the way to the field of Borodino, whereupon we drank a skinful of Johnny Walker Black Label. After that we felt kinda dizzy, but on the other hand it helped us to sense the whole eeriness of a grand Napoleonic battle. Danube happens to be the first non-Russian speaking member of Continuity. Raevsky and me like his sense of team play, his cheerfulness and involvedness during the battle. He's especially strong as a middle player on a terrain map. He usually keeps 4 light formations in the middle with 2 infantry divisions on the side, while cavalry clears the way up front. He's a hothead and sometimes doesn't calculate the risks well enough, but he tries hard to take out the most he can. He always provides a support if you find yourself in a pickle, and appreciates your support if it's the other way around. His signature are dense infantry formations, when he picks factions like Spain, Prussia or Ottomans for the sake of cheap infantry, and makes columns instead of thin lines, just like an old good Roman would probably do. Cizeron is a beloved confidante of Raevsky and myself. We make a very solid trio, especially on terrain maps. He's a steadfast defensive player, but his contribution in counter-offensives is such a treat. He usually picks most expensive factions such as France, Russia and the UK. Unlike his real-life character, Cizeron doesn't waste words or dodge the bullet. Instead, he faces the enemy up front and secures the area the teams wants him to. His incredible courage and firmness, doubled by experience in warfare, make him an outstanding warrior. By smartly positioning his units, he barely ever causes teamfire, even when it seems inevitable. He's also quite lucky, I must say. His great panache in the battle is reinforced by sometimes ridiculous army builds, such as taking best possible general, a square amount of dragoons, and up to 4 militia. You don't expect them to keep discipline for a long time, but the hell they do. Cheemy is our second foreigner and oddly the second citizen of the crown in our ranks. He can be energetic, can be docile, can be smart or can be outsmarted. I really enjoy our prompt and subtle communication on the battlefield. Naturally, he is loyal to his native faction of the UK. At odd times he happens to switch to Prussia, but I can hardly remember playing him anything else but rifle-based factions. He is especially fit as a commander of a detached army in any operation requiring discretion, ability, and calmness. Unless I ask him to conceal behind the concrete wall, he is quite creative about initiating the attack on his direction. Middle position tends to diminish his fortitude, his boldness grows whenever he acts on the flank. I wish we could play a little more. He's a busy guy with lots of hobbies and gigs. Jim, whenever you want to strike a new conversation on our common passion, which is cocktails, you have my contact, bud. The Pooh is our sweet flying Dutchman. This moniker reflects his affinity to provide great and timely cavalry support, be it a protective measure or a counter-offensive. He is actually one of the most honorable members of continuity. His vast experience over Napoleonic clans, the Pooh gained due to his leading positions in one, then for a short time in Unity, God forgive him that, until in June 2022 he ended up in our community. His top three factions to pick are Austria, France, and the UK. All of them show a huge range of cavalry, but infantry is not their weak side either. Speaking of cavalry, his signature unit is the 10th Hussar Regiment. He usually picks skirmishes on open terrain maps to secure range advantage and to put stakes. The Pooh is a sensible, supportive player, always finds a hole to squeeze in to bolster the team effort. He doesn't let the enemy rest in peace by delicately pointing at his mistakes. He tends to postpone the attack on his direction until his allies are victorious on the opposite flank. After that, his offensive becomes truly merciless. Ghoul is another Russian to contribute to the might of continuity. We had a few spectacular casual 4v4 games together. I had gotten his contact via a good Steam friend of mine, Karl von Clausewitz. Their duo lasted throughout the whole summer season 2022 and resulted in many victories, including some of Napoleon's best players. His favorite factions are those with units who have a strong melee and morale, like Russia and France. More than even Danube, he showcases his fondness for dense infantry column formations on full blast almost in every battle. He is very reliable at defending his flank, where his enemy often ends up hastily retreating and Ghoul chasing him, cursing and swearing about such an act of cowardice. Sadly, Ghoul has abandoned the vanilla version ever since the April update came out, and now prefers to wallow in sadness playing tedious battles in NTW3. Konyng translates from Danish as king, is our oldest member in terms of biological age and also one of the oldest NTW players, double oldie. Like myself, he witnessed the heyday of EOS, Via Militara and Ross Imperial Guard clans in Napoleon dating back to 2014. Similar to Cheemy, Konyng picks solely factions with good rifle stats like Prussia and the UK. He is fond of grand battles with artillery and doesn't feel particularly at home when it comes to high-paced battles. He fights like a soldier and has a poor opinion of his men when the things get messy and the fortune of the team effort depends on his attack. I highly appreciate his good stamina and the execution of cavalry outbreaks in the crucial moment of the battle. His line formation is pedantic and somewhat old-fashioned, and toggle Lightfoot with infantry behind it. At times he happens to irrigate a few acres of land with his bullets, causing the insects a bit of sleep disturbance. Marshal Lannes is our member from Canada and a priceless team player. He had a clan experience before and this is his second account on Steam. I love him for his boldness in battle as well as military instinct and promptness in deciding. He knows when to hit the enemy and how. His handy faction is Prussia. In rare cases he steps out on it to pick France, but notably never the UK. His signature is a high mobility of his light foot, which he holds and relocates in a group. All battles I fought alongside with Marshal Lannes, or sometimes on the opposite side, were a true gem to rewatch afterwards. One YouTuber was so fascinated by Lannes' play that he even ended up recording and uploading the battle called Pyramid's Masterpiece on his channel. I'll drop the link down below. It really hurts me that I haven't heard of him for already a couple of months. I'm gonna be frank with you, Monsieur Lannes, your comeback would make me happier. Klyam, originally known by the nickname Yevlandi, is a talented Russian player who joined Continuity during our transfer window in February 2023. He doesn't play this game as long as the members mentioned before, but due to his tactician abilities and competitive style, he climbed up the ladder pretty fast. His favorite picks are Prussia, Ottomans and sometimes the UK. He is very proficient on grassy, especially in 1v1, which is a rare case in our community, I admit. Klyam usually initiates a very pacey attack that allows him to catch his enemy off guard and hit despite the unit or position disadvantage. Klyam is a general team player who perfectly manages to organically support you without any direct order. His cavalry attacks are sometimes quite sloppy though, so that his infantry has to take a heavy toll in advancing on its own. Klyam is barely online at the moment, his enthusiasm for NTW waned a little, but I'm certain there are many amazing battles ahead of us. Oreo is our latest member, a highly talented US American who joined us only a week later after Klyam. He represents the Generation Z, the very new generation of NTW. Oreo altered his skills in tactics by watching a lot of tutorials on multiplayer and practiced the earned knowledge in 1v1 on Grassy. He also proved to be a very skilled team player and a double line enthusiast. Whatever is going on in the battlefield, his motto is keep calm and double line. Fun fact, his double lines are occasionally so thin that he ends up having a single line. His range of playable factions is quite huge, but he mostly takes those with shooting cav like Ottomans, Sweden and France. He has a great sense of team play. He's very cautious and adroit about the attack on his flank though, which in some situations can be very efficient, in others rather disastrous. I remember the 2v2 battle with him as his opponent was yelling at him in chat because Oreo played too cautiously but without even kiting, preventing all counterattacks of his enemy and killing his units one by one, eventually squashing him completely. And that was it. So far we are 12 players, we don't hurry to extend our ranks. For those who consider to join us, keep in mind that our transfer window opens twice a year, in summer and winter, lasting 1 month each. We have a great variety of communication channels, battle tips, replay analytics and an award-winning coach. His name is Talcor, he is known for his merciless full-scale attacks and masterful deflections of enemies' attacks while being outnumbered. As a member, you would enjoy an exclusive training session with him. Nevertheless, we are a community of oldies. I don't expect everyone to be permanently online and extraordinarily competitive in multiplayer battles. Tactical ingenuity, lifelong devotion to NTW, and smooth team play are the main criteria that I take into account while recruiting. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with continuity, more than just unity.